Welcome to Householders, a conversation about American life as Zen practice. I'm Inga Annie Wade.
And I'm Kyosaku John Mitchell, and we're lay members of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center. The topic inevitably comes up in any conversation among, let's say, converts to Buddhism. People who find Buddhism at some point in their life and decide that it's their path. The conversation always comes up about the path as this progression, where people who come to Buddhism, in my experience, are looking for something, and that something you might even be able to describe as a change in their life or their personality or something. And the path represents this progression to change that thing. And the idea is, in this conception, if you work hard and do a lot of zazen, or do a lot, you keep your practice up and you work diligently on it, that you'll get farther and farther down the path to this thing, and maybe someday you'll get there. And then there are extreme versions of this that use words like enlightenment or awakening or nirvana, and put these up as some sort of goal. And people have these goals or these visions or these ideals in the back of their mind as they do their practice. And then on top of that, I feel like in a lot of modern and Western forms of Buddhism, in Zen in particular, there's a lot of talk that then gets layered on top of that. That's like, we don't practice for a goal. We don't sit for a reason. We're not doing, like, the practice is the goal. Zazen is enlightenment. And we use all these phrases and sayings like that and sort of talk ourselves out of that way of thinking. But I don't think that totally eliminates it for a lot of people. And it might even cause sort of like cognitive dissonance to say, I do this for no reason. I just do it because this is what you do. But then sort of have in your heart these sort of desires to improve something or change something or work on something.
Yeah.
And I don't really fall neatly into that category, at least not anymore. Maybe I did once, I think of this practice as like something to do to improve myself. And I don't feel that way anymore. I might harbor it in sort of unconscious ways. And I'm interested in exploring that. But I've also heard from you a much more sort of down to earth way of thinking about developing things, developing certain faculties or traits through practice. And I want to hear from you how your way of thinking about that relates to these teachings about, in the most extreme version, like in the Heart Sutra, no path. But in a lot of other ways of putting it have to do with like practice is enlightenment and that sort of thing. Like, you're already there, we already have it. So how does that kind of teaching in Zen connect to the way you think about Zazen as a form of help or improvement, or how, like, what words would you use for that?
Yeah, it's such a weird concept to think about, because why would you do it if you never had a goal in mind?
Right.
I mean, why do you do anything if there's no goal in mind? You eat because you're hungry, and you go to sleep because you're tired, and you have the goal of that I'll be rested if I go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I think that I've heard like Shinryu Suzuki and Dogen say stuff like, oh, well, if you start with the goal of attainment in mind, then you're already off to a bad start. But how can you even start if you don't have a goal in mind? That's always the sort of, enigma of it, I guess. I obviously came in with a goal in mind. I think it wasn't ever to reach nirvana. I try to put it in my mind, nirvana, as something that's just like unattainable, and that it's really just like the journey to reaching that goal that is what's most important. So I don't know. I mean, I think that in some ways I look at certain people or people throughout history and I'm like, I wonder if they were enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know what that means, so it's kind of a hard thing to try to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, instead I do think of it like very practically, like you said, which is still kind of having a goal in mind, I think, but it is more of a practice than it is like I don't gain something instantly from doing it. It's like delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can't even like draw that connection that this thing happened because I was meditating. So in essence, even if you have an idea that, yeah, like when you meditate, the emotional center of your brain, if you do it long enough, then that actually shrinks. But it doesn't necessarily feel like that,
Mm-hmm.
like that's what's happening. Like you can't notice it immediately, at least.
Yeah, right.
You don't just sit down and be like, wow, my emotional
I feel
brain
my
is
brain
getting smaller.
shrinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so gradual that it's so hard to see the improvement sometimes until it just like sneaks up on you.
Mm.
So I guess, yeah, I do have in mind that like what keeps me coming to the cushion a lot of times is like I'm not happy. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go sit down and work that out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think lately, well, not lately, always this is my problem is that I always make these like grand goals, and then once I attain them, I'm not any happier than when I didn't attain them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that about me, and I dislike that about me. And I'm hoping that if I sit long enough, I'll stop being that way. And that's pretty much my goal. But I try, again, like, I get the whole thing. You're not supposed to have a goal. But practically speaking, how do you not have a goal?
I think you've said something more nuanced than that teaching, though, too, which is, I mean, first of all, yeah, like how can you practically do it without a goal? Like, even if it's just a sort of lure to get you to sit down in the first place, like the goal may drop away when you're practicing, but the goal serves its purpose of getting you to sit. And how could you not have that? That's on one level, I think a very good point that you're making, but there's one that I think you're saying, I want to clarify, that's even more interesting to me, which is that you use the phrase delayed gratification. The awareness that the goal is not getting tangibly any closer seems like it's sort of an object of practice for you. Like you have this goal in mind, but you sit and you're conscious of not feeling yourself progressing incrementally towards that goal. And you keep sitting with that anyway. And that delayed gratification is sort of like a way of pushing off short-term desires or needs into long-term, lifelong things. And that itself is a sort of achievement unrelated to the goal in a way that I find pretty interesting. Is that, am I
Because there's not like an
right?
immediate reward attached to sitting most of the time.
Yeah. So even if this goal gets you to do the practice, you are aware that the practice isn't moving you towards the goal in some tangible or measurable way, and it's not like you're deluding yourself that you're getting like a little bit happier and a little bit more forgiving and a little bit whatever it is each time you sit. You're realizing that it feels like it always feels. And yet that goal still sort of remains. And then you have it sort of in the back of your mind. It sounded like you were saying, maybe someday I'll look back and realize that it changed.
Maybe I'll look back and realize I never needed a goal.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like there's a new teaching there. I mean, I feel like it's a less kind of idealistic version of the same teaching that, you know, because it is idealistic to sort of think, I will just sit here for no reason and be perfectly okay with that always.
Mm-hmm.
and have that be my practice. I feel like you're admitting a sort of practical need for something that the teachings say not to have, but you're doing it in a way that's very conscious of it as just a sort of means to the end of doing the practice.
Right. It's hard to attach a reward to the practice. I think that you do a lot of things for some sort of gratification, but I guess the gratification is just that you went and sat down and did it anyway.
Do you have a sort of reward feeling after you sit that's like, I did it? Is that a thing that happens for you or motivates you at all?
No.
Hmm.
Again, I think most of the reward comes from just being with the community.
Uh-huh.
I think that's why it's so hard for me to sit by myself. I mean, I do, but I just sit so much less
Yeah.
by myself than I do with the community. So there's probably more reward sitting with them than on my own. When on my own, like, I'll do it because I think I should do it, but I don't feel like I get any reward from it.
Well, that seems good from a Zen point of view.
Well, what about you?
Well, I think that might be a risk for me. I don't feel it consciously, but I do think that I have a motivation somewhere deep down of really penetrating the heart of the great matter. Like use like big Zen words like that. Like I am motivated by the idea that my zazen is deepening, that it's expanding, that I'm getting more closer to the heart of it than I was before, or than I was a year ago when I joined the Sangha. And the thing is, I really can palpably feel that to be the case.
Yeah.
But the conscious part of doing the practice every day doesn't really have any goals or rewards in mind. But I do think that there might be a sort of, and like lizard brain sort of reward circuitry that lights up for me after I'm done, because it helps me towards this goal of, deepening the practice, whatever that is.
Well, listen, like, this is what's confusing to me, because you're sitting more than I am and you feel like maybe you're getting some kind of reward out of it. This is what I'm bringing back to my life, where I set up all these goals that I kind of like don't live in the moment all the time, because I'm thinking about like what it'll be like when these goals are reached, and once I reach them, it's like not any different from when I didn't have that goal reached. And I'm wondering, like, maybe that's why I don't know, maybe that's why they don't want us to have the goals, but it seems like they're also helping. Like, I've done a lot of things because I had these goals in mind. I've gotten my master's degree. I'm almost about to graduate. And, worked really hard at certain things just to achieve those goals. And I try not to bring that as much goal-oriented stuff into my practice, and yet I don't do it as much. So where, like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, there's a psychology that, I mean, and I feel like you've expressed some pretty neat tricks of psychology in how you get yourself onto the cushion. And there's just there's more. I have other ones that you haven't mentioned. I mean, I don't know if I've talked about it this way, but I had a pretty firm psychological goal. I don't know if psychological is the right word for it, but I had a sort of training goal, a very concrete one, behind the intention to start doing this intensive everyday practice that I've been doing a year ago, which was based on my prior experience with doing zazen fervently for short amounts of time and then burning out on it, over and over again, and going for many months without ever doing any zazen for years since I first encountered the practice. And the thing I figured out about that eventually is that I was not making it a habit in a very boring, like almost hygiene oriented way. I was making it into this sort of idealistic spiritual goal. And really what I realized, this time last year, is that what I wanted is for it to really just be an everyday boring, not boring, but, mundane thing that I do. It's just a thing that I do. And so the metaphor, I mean, it's possible I've said this on the show already, but the metaphor that or the analogy that I came up with was brushing my teeth. I wanted to make Zazen into something that was like brushing my teeth, because it would be something that I would do not automatically, not out of reflex, but because it was something that I needed to do for everything to feel right. And if I didn't do it, it would be okay, but it would still feel weird, and then I would go back to doing it. It wouldn't destroy the habit like I did every time I skipped one day in the past. So this is a goal-oriented way of looking at it. The goal was to make it a normal thing that I do all the time.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's still a goal. It's weird, but that seems like a better goal in some ways. Like I kind of want everything in my life to feel that way. That because then I feel like I can actually be there more in the moment during those things, because there's no like thinking about like what it's going to be like when I get really good at brushing my teeth or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah. One of the things that having this kind of goal, this very mechanical, it's a metaphor I don't mean to use, like this just very mundane bodily goal that I had about the practice, is it was a good way to get rid of resistance to doing the practice. Where if I ever had any kind of feeling of like, ugh, like I don't want to do this today, there was an out, a psychological out that was like, remember brushing your teeth, like just do it so that it's like brushing your teeth. Like you don't look forward to brushing your teeth every day, but you don't regret brushing your teeth either. So just brush your teeth. And then I would do it. And it sort of got the motivation and resistance questions out of the way. And since it wasn't a spiritual goal, or at least it wasn't framed as a spiritual goal, it wasn't a goal of like, I want to become a better person who meditates all the time. It was just a goal of like, I want to do this particular thing with my body and brain and breathing every day. And I want to make that into a habit. And that kind of kept all of that thinking and wrestling and resistance in this sort of very boring realm. Maybe one important part of it is that it wasn't affecting my character. It wasn't reflecting on how good of a person I am or how virtuous of a person I was. Like it wasn't about self-improvement. It was just about changing. It was no different from like having, like, do I want to drink coffee today, or do I want to, like, what do I want for lunch? It was a decision on the order of like the kinds of stuff I'm going to do today, not a decision on the kind of person that I'm going to be. And maybe that's the category of goal that Zen teachers throughout the ages have warned against, is like, don't have the goal of being someone else. Have the goal of being your natural self. And your natural self does change and does things that are more or less skillful or more or less healthy. And it's you have to take care of yourself. You quoted one of the deepest, Zen, I think it's a koan, the when hungry eat, when tired sleep thing. Like, I don't know if you did that on purpose, but like that is a Zen thing. It's like like monk, it's the classic situation of monks being all impertinent and being like, well, how do I get enlightened right now? And the teacher's like, when you're hungry, eat. When you're tired, sleep. And that's all there is to it. And I think that maybe what's the deepest thing about that teaching is when, I don't know what the condition is for doing Zazen, but it should be on the same level as eating and sleeping.
Yeah.
When alive, do Zazen.
Well, I think the difference with that is like we have to kind of form that habit, like you were saying, because it's very obvious that I'm going to eat because I'm going to be in a bad mood. If I don't, I'm not going to feel very good. And if I don't brush my teeth feel like there's like mittens on them or something like that. And I don't want to go to bed with mittens on my teeth.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
That's exactly what I want not doing Zazen to feel like.
Yeah.
Having mittens on my brain.
But yeah, so the problem is there's not like a physiological drive to do zazen. So we have to make that up for ourselves, somehow train ourselves to feel like it's weird.
Well, so I found one. Like I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was. I think I thought that too when I decided to start this time, because I'd done a lot of zazen and there never had been. But there is a teaching. I can't believe we're going to break this seal on the podcast and talk about it. There is a sort of physiological practice, like a grounded in Chinese medicine, that has been part of Zen the whole time, that when I ask sensei or other Soto Zen teachers about it, they're always like, yeah, you should do that. But they never bring it up. Whereas in Rinzai Zen, this is what they teach you to do on the first day. And I feel like it's a complete self-own that you don't learn this in every Soto Zen center in America on the first day that you come to do Zazen. But I understand on a philosophical level why the Soto Shu doesn't want to be teaching specific physiological concepts like this, because there's a sort of magical or mystical or spiritual component to it. And that doesn't really vibe with just sitting until you find it and realize that it's just part of your body, or just like the way you are. The practice is breathing from the hara, or specifically the tanden in Japanese, or dantian in Chinese. It's this spot in the belly that is came into. I mean, obviously there are analogs in Indian like physiology, or I don't know what you call this, the Indian spiritual medicine body, the Vedic yogic system. Like obviously, like
I know what area of the body you're talking about. The little pit in the stomach kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think I know it more from yoga, to be honest.
Yeah. So like there are clearly analogous concepts in Indian Buddhism that come from that tradition. But the Taoist practice of breathing from the hara made it into Zen in China, and has been passed down as a sort of key to, no pun intended, because ki is the word in Japanese for the energy that you're working with, chi in Chinese. It's the key to, I mean, I guess to put it in simple terms, bringing the energy down from your head into your body. And that is a sensation that you can really feel. And so there's all this teaching about about how the energy moves, the ki or chi in Chinese, like it's the same term as prana in Sanskrit, and that's probably a term that people use pretty conventionally in yoga classes. It's the same thing, but it is definitely something that all forms of Buddhism work with as a sort of embodiment practice. But the thing is in Taoism and in early Zen that made it into the practices that we do today, but in very different forms, there are all these specific kinds of breathing. And so it didn't really light up for me until I started doing a kind of breathing warm up that I got from Rinzai Zen instructions, which was about, so there's this spot, and it's supposedly like 3 finger widths down from your navel and then like 1 inch into your body. You rest your attention there, and then you breathe in such a way that the air comes all the way down that low into your body. And then you feel that spot. And when you breathe out, that spot remains sort of expanded rather than sucking back in as the air goes out, that means you're holding it properly. It's very hard to sort of do just from verbal instructions, but you spend enough time breathing this way, you find it. And so in this text of Rinzai's breathing instructions, the teacher gave the instruction to do this 10 times, counting 10 breaths at the beginning of Zazen, and then you can drop it. And so the interesting thing about this particular thing I was reading is that he kept making allowances for Soto style sitting. He was saying, you do this, you do your 10 breaths, and then you take hold of your mu koan or whatever, you do your Rinzai Zazen after that. But he kept saying things like, if you want to sit with your eyes open, it's okay. If you want to just gaze at the wall instead of holding your koan, that's okay. And so that kept giving me permission to be like, what if I just do this and keep doing the practice that I've been doing, but do this kind of breathing? And so I started doing these 10 breaths and then sitting the rest of my sit just the way I normally would. And it didn't take but a couple of days before there was this fire in my belly from doing this breathing that not only did it kick in over a few minutes as I was doing Zazen, but it stayed there all day or like most of the day. And I could recover it very easily if it went away. And so now it sort of feels like, there's a lot more I could say about what it does for me and how it feels and other stuff I'm doing to work with it. But the bottom line is there's a feeling of having done Zazen that day that's different from not having done it for me. And it also makes it quicker to feel like I am doing the practice and not just settling in to it, because there's this feeling, there's this like thing I know to look for and can find. And I don't doubt that I'm still very, very early on in the process of figuring out what this practice is and how it works for me. But there's no question that there's a physical sensation associated with practice that's as profound of a thing as like feeling like your muscles after you worked out.
So why do you think that they do not teach it in Soto Zen?
Well, I have a couple of, well, first of all, they do in Japan, in the monastery. And I have a feeling that it is that the reasoning behind not really introducing new practitioners to it in a lay context was made for good reasons, because it introduces a concept, a sort of imaginary like thing to have in your mind other than sitting, and a sort of, is it working, is it not working kind of question that I do think people could get really hung up on really easily. And I think I got this teaching in college when I had a Rinzai teacher, but I was just like, whoa, okay, I'm supposed to feel something and I don't. And so, like this, like I sort of let it go. But this time I was like, people keep talking about this. It's got to be somewhere. And I've done enough preliminary Soto Zen practice that I feel like I can explore this honestly without getting attached to whether it works or not. Maybe even from a skeptical point of view of like, this isn't going to work, but like, I'll try it anyway. And then I found it, and it took some time. But I don't think that a beginner is really prepared to do that in a way that doesn't get hung up on like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Kinds of stuff. And I feel like Soto generally comes down on the right side of the decision to just simplify it as much as possible and say, all you have to do is sit. And if you're sitting, you're doing it. And if you're not sitting, you're not doing it. And I think that's the right call for most people. But I do think there's so much more to how to sit, how the body can sit, than is available in that instruction. And this kind of breathing has to do with it. And so, I mean, really, my practice is kind of a hybrid now, except that I do sit with my eyes open and I don't have a koan, and I do just sit once I get this breathing going. So I feel very strongly that it's Soto practice and that I'm not doing
it's like practice. You're just using it to start out.
Right. Yeah. It's no different to me from adjusting my posture to get like the seat.
Right. I mean, they usually say stuff like take a few deep breaths in before you settle into a breath.
Yeah. A
regular, natural breath, I guess.
Yeah, and Sensei actually pushed back on me a little bit at one point because he felt at least what I was describing was not that. I was saying things like, now I breathe like this, and it's so. I said the phrase, when I learned to breathe like this, everything changed. And he stopped me.
You don't need to learn how to breathe.
Yeah, exactly.
You already know how to breathe.
Yeah, exactly right.
I could imagine him saying that.
And he was right. But at the same time, I think it was just that I was overexcited. It wasn't that I was wrong. It was that I was attaching myself to this outcome. And the idea of a natural breath does make sense to me, but I think that the idea of a natural running stride makes sense to me too. But just running however you would instinctively run doesn't mean your body is moving in the way that would let you run the fastest that you could possibly run, or the most efficiently, or without hurting yourself or something.
But I don't know about that analogy, because it's not like the goal is to do Zazen better than before.
No. It's not about doing Zazen better. It's about breathing better. It's about breathing. And man, I just said better. It's not about doing Zazen better. It's not about breathing better. It's about breathing in a way that engages your whole body and mind, instead of being something that you do reflexively because it's how you always breathe. And this is actually really what the key is. Like, I know I've described this like amazing sensation that happens and how cool that is, but really what's changed is that breathing has become all I'm doing. Like, I don't have to wrestle with thinking anymore, because breathing is so much more of an experience than thinking is when I'm breathing this way. And so this is what I mean, maybe in the most realistic or concrete terms, about dropping the energy down from my head into my body, is that there's so much more happening in the breath as a result of engaging the whole body and all these muscles and all this energy this way, that thinking is just kind of like, it's just kind of this like dull background experience that's not even interesting anymore. And so it's helping me do the practice. I'm not necessarily loading it with better or worse or faster or slower or more enlightened or less enlightened or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's an aid to just dropping everything and sitting and doing the practice with my whole body. And the thing is, it creates this sensation that's the mittens on your teeth that we are looking for.
I don't obviously, like, I'm not like trying to say I know, but what if creating that aid is making it too easy for you?
Well, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's a lot of work because it involves the whole body.
Yeah. But you said it's making it easier not to think about stuff.
Yeah, that's what I mean by easier, is that the distractions of like a not fully engaged body and mind drop away when the whole body is involved this way.
Yeah. So I was just trying to challenge you. Like, what if engaging the whole body like that is aiding you in not having to think as much, and it's making it easier in a way?
Well, are you saying that wrestling with tumultuous thoughts is a good, affirmatively good thing about Zen practice? Like, is that what we're supposed to do? Well, it's not like they're not there. It's not like I'm not doing that. It's that the biggest change in how that's happening for me is that it's gone from using thoughts to deal with thoughts to using something completely unlike thoughts to deal with thoughts. And, like that the thoughts are thoughts and thoughts, and then the stop thinking. Stop thinking, no thinking. Like, that doesn't work. but when thoughts and thoughts and thoughts and thoughts and thoughts are happening, and like so many more organs and nerves in my body than are involved in that are doing something else, it doesn't even need to stop. The thinking doesn't need to stop. It doesn't need to go away, because it's just this one tiny little whispering thing that's happening in this huge, like, crashing ocean of sensations. And that is, it sounds like I'm really talking it up. I'm really trying to sell you on this, but all I'm saying is there's a feeling to doing the practice and having done the practice that works in that boring, mundane way we were talking about.
Yeah. No, I think that's what's really cool about Zen practice, is that everybody's practice is going to be a little different, and there's room for some exploration within that. And I think that's really cool that you're able to feel like practice is like brushing your teeth or any other regular ritual that we have throughout the day. Because I mean, I would like that too.
I mean, I heard what you said about practicing with the community being one of your big motivators, and having sitting by yourself be correspondingly like not as compelling of an experience for you.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, my initial reaction to that was kind of positive. It was like, that seems like a good motivation. And being super motivated to like sit in your room by yourself doing Zazen tends to smack of that kind of like, I want to get enlightened way of looking at it. And if you don't have that goal, and the goal is just about sort of being in a Sangha, that seems healthy in a way. But if there is something that feels out of whack to you about not feeling as intrinsically motivated to sit by yourself, like what is it?
Well, that's what I was trying to say. Like, it's like this goal motivators. I've taught myself to be motivated by goals for so long that I'm like, oh, you don't have a goal in mind when you're going to sit? Then we have no reason to do that. And I actively don't want to be that way. I don't want to be someone who's motivated by goals because it's making me less happy. Mm-hmm. Even though I get a lot of stuff done. That's what I was saying. Like, you seem to be getting more Zazen done than I am. But when I use these goals, I get a lot of things done. You know, I exercise like 5 times a week. I eat really healthy. I have a 4.0 grade average. Mm-hmm. Like, if I set something as a goal, it will be the goal that I am working on. But in the back of my head, even though I do really well at achieving those goals, I'm always thinking about when it will be over, when I can not like have to deal with that goal anymore. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to stop that cycle. I don't know how to just be like, okay, now go sit down and do nothing. Because I don't have, like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing something productive or something, even though I know it is productive. But it doesn't feel that way sitting. So it's something that I've just been wrestling with a lot.
I know what you mean about goals having a sort of built-in end point. I mean, that's what they are, obviously. But like, there's a sort of emotional like desire for the end, for not having to have the goal anymore. And, you know, maybe my way of constructing it is a version of this that tricks that system. If the goal is to do Zazen every day, then once you're doing Zazen every day, you have finished the goal, so you can get rid of the goal.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe your way of understanding doing Zazen every day, or maybe it's not every day for you. Maybe it's something, some other different thing. But if it's constructed in terms of a goal to get Zazen into your life in a particular way, then once it's there, you get to check it off.
That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm afraid of. Like, if I make it into a goal, which I am used to using as a motivator for everything that I do, I won't want to do it anymore.
But the goal is to start doing it in a certain way and never stop.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do that with some things, like brushing my teeth and washing my face and stuff like that. But I don't know. Maybe I have goals in mind when I brush my teeth. Maybe I'm like, the next time I go to the dentist, they're gonna like check my gums and they'll be like, that looks good.
Householders is a production of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Silent Thunder Order. Find us on the web ataszc.org.
Our Sangha depends on your support. You can donate by PayPal to donate at storder.org. Gasho.